Which of the following animals has been observed as the more aggressive one? A. Lemon sharks, or B. Mute swans? Hint, it probably isn't the one you're thinking about. Keep listening to Formosa Fauna to find out. Spend the next 20 minutes feeding your brain with Formosa Fauna so you can learn all about the animal kingdom and become smarter than all of your friends. Every Friday is Formosa Fauna Friday. I'm Tristan Hildebrand, the voice of Formosa Fauna. I love animals and I love talking about them. If you're even remotely curious about the animal kingdom, you're in the right place. On today's agenda, more animals are expected to be banned in Taiwan, all about lemon sharks, busking isn't just for Korean celebrities, it's also for some animals, and a very sad day in the Taipei Zoo. Let's dive right in. In the news this week in Taiwan is a potential ban on the ownership of many animal species. Taiwan is proposing to ban the ownership and importation of over 900 new animal species, citing public safety and animal welfare concerns. These newly banned animal species include raccoons, alligator snapping turtles, and many, many more. The Department of Animal Welfare outlined criteria for the additions, but such a proposal has not been without some resistance. Critics of the planned ban are questioning their evaluation process and wondering how it will be enforced. Just last Friday is when they outlined their three main criteria. The first basically prioritizes species not included in the Act on Wildlife Conservation's schedule of protected species under Article 4. The second lists animals regulated in other countries without formal import records to Taiwan. And the third is species considered to be dangerous due to venom, potential to cause serious injuries, or other public safety risks. Ownership bans extend to 8 animal categories, including Burmese pythons, raccoons, and all Chelydridae species. One organization dissatisfied with the proposal is the Taiwan Amphibian and Reptile Association, who criticized the ministry's approach, saying that it was the Industrial Technology Research Institute that was tasked with evaluating the banned species instead of a wildlife-focused agency. They added that an agricultural policy formulated by an agricultural agency was entrusted to an industrial research institute for evaluation, which is to them unacceptable. Another complaint raised the question about how such a ban would be enforced. Complainants tend to doubt local government's ability to monitor and accommodate confiscated animals without sufficient staff. Lin Shimin, a National Taiwan Normal University professor, pointed out that keeping cats and dogs as pets also poses risks to some wildlife, like leopard cats. So the point is to manage the risks and educate the owners rather than prohibit the species, as that approach could also drive pet ownership underground, leaving issues unaddressed. For now, the implementation date and list are still being finalized. That is according to the Department of Animal Welfare Director Chang Wen-chuan. He expressed the hope to reach a consensus through meetings and dialogue. Taiwan is an island that is 70% covered by mountains, lakes, and jungle. Taiwan's early connections to the Pacific and Southeast Asia are well established and are the basis for seeing Taiwan as an ocean nation. Did you know that over 17,000 species thrive in the deep sea where no light penetrates the ocean waves, or that there are 38,000 different kinds of microbes in just 1 liter of seawater? These were all discoveries made by the Census of Marine Life, a 10-year international effort that assessed the diversity, distribution, and abundance of marine life. Today, I'm going to talk to you about lemon sharks. Lemon sharks are actually a very well-researched species that center around the Caribbean. They also help dispel misconceptions about sharks because Not all of the toothy predators are mindless killing machines. Some of them are thoughtful animals with personalities, beings that are even capable of learning and remembering. One scientist, Eugenie Clark, became known as the Shark Lady as she was one of the first scientists to work very closely with the species and helped show the public that not all sharks were alike. And these sharks in particular were very misunderstood. At her research facility in Florida, she conducted her own studies in sea pens all the way back in the 1950s. She found out that, much like dogs, the lemon sharks could be trained to do things, to perform tricks, by giving them food or treats. One of the tricks they learned to perform was pressing a target that was striped underwater with their noses. That would trigger a bell and reward them with a piece of fish. When the trick wasn't reinforced, they could actually remember it for at least several months. She found this out when the sharks stopped feeding over winter when the water temperatures dropped. Once the water warmed back up in the spring, she put the target back and they still knew what to do. Funny enough, juvenile sharks tend to hang out in what they call gangs. They prefer to swim with sharks that they already know, not strangers. Within each gang, researchers have noticed that each individual will take on a different role or express their varying personality. Some will emerge as leaders, while others are content with just following them around. Some may think of those in gangs as their friends, which is hard to confirm or deny, but it is clear through research that they do learn more quickly when they're part of a well-established social network. Like salmon and sea turtles, lemon sharks are also incredible ocean navigators as they can find their way back to mangroves that they were born in when it's time for them to have pups of their own. Theories would suggest that they have electrosensitive snouts that they can use to detect the Earth's geomagnetic field and draw a map in their minds. But how exactly they're able to navigate so well remains an unsolved mystery. In northern and central Eurasia lives a bird called the mute swan that is known to many as the bird best avoided. These mute swans, much like the name suggests, are significantly less vocal than other swans, although they're not completely mute. When they do make noises, it sounds like soft dog barks and yaps, but they also make grunts, snorts, and low whistles. The most commonly made sound is a loud hissing noise that the male, or cob, uses to warn intruders. During the spring to summer breeding months, a male mute swan will aggressively defend his partner, their nest, their eggs, and their chicks. He will display a range of threats that keeps away most animals, including ducks, other swans, dogs, and of course, humans. Their bill to tail length is anywhere from 140 to 160 centimeters, and they have wingspans anywhere from 210 to 240 centimeters. For American listeners, that's about 5 feet in height and about 6 to 8 feet for that wingspan. Their size, power, fierce nature, bite, and spurs on their wings and claw-tipped toes make them a bird you do not want to mess with. When it comes to the mute swan behavior, researching this has led me to learn a new word, busking. Since I first learned about K-pop, I knew busking to be what artists and musicians and groups do when they perform out on the streets for publicity or money. Busking, that's what it is, right? Well, when it comes to mute swans, busking, spelled the same, may refer to their behavior that they have towards intruders. A defending male will half raise and arch his wings over his back, forming a U, and will bend his neck, keeping his head as low as possible as he paddles at great speed, surging towards the intruder. That is what is busking in the mute swan world. If said intruder fails to heed the busking warning, he will lunge at them to peck, flap, and scratch. This often is in combination with that commonly heard hissing sound. Swans are very territorial when breeding and do not tolerate outsiders. In the last 3 episodes, we dispelled the 3 biggest myths when it comes to dog misbehavior. That is, that dogs are spiteful, that dogs misbehave because they are trying to be dominant, and that their breed plays any kind of role in their training. To make that clear, Zach George, dog trainer, has stated clearly that dogs are not spiteful. They don't misbehave out of spite, nor do they misbehave to try to assert dominance over you. In fact, even the whole alpha theory was but a misled observation. In general, we do have a lot of misconceptions when it comes to dogs. However, in this episode segment, we're starting to dig into the nitty-gritty of training. That's the fundamentals. I'm referring to Zach George's Guide to a Well-Behaved Dog because he's a real dog trainer. He's the professional. Quick, what's the first trick everyone teaches their dog to do? 3, 2, 1. Sit. If your answer was not sit, anything other than sit, I have no clue what you said. I honestly don't know. So send me an email. I'm very curious. Sitting down and laying down can be combined in the same category as how to train tricks because they use the same method of coaxing. As for sitting, here's how you do it. Hold a small treat between your fingers where the dog can see it. Move that treat towards your dog's nose, keeping it snug over the bridge of their nose so your dog lifts their head up and back. That is a huge part of lure training. Just keep the treat and the nose very close, like magnets. As that head tilts farther back, oftentimes the dog will just automatically sit down. If the dog jumps, the treat is typically too far away from their face. Once the dog's hind legs touch the ground, say, "Yes, sit," and let them eat the treat. Keep repeating that over and over again. Once both you and the dog have gotten the hang of it, turn the luring part into a hand signal you'd like to use. My family has always used a palm facing the dog, then folded our fingers down into somewhat of an open fist. I know that not everyone does that though, and there are quite a few variations. Then, the same thing goes for teaching your dog how to lay down. Hold that small treat in your hand and hold it very closely to your dog's nose. Slowly move the treat towards the ground and maybe even inwards towards your dog's chest, allowing the dog to follow the lure into a lying position. Once the dog actually lies down, say something like, "Good, lay down," and reward them with a treat. Some trainers will also say down instead of lay down, perhaps because it's shorter, more succinct, and easier to recognize for the dogs, but my family has always used lay down. That's not the only way you can do laying down though. If you notice your dog is about to lay down, you can say lay down or down while they are performing the action. So that is while they're in the process of laying down rather than when they're already laying down. After a period of time, the dog will likely start forming a connection between their action and the word. This segment of the show will teach listeners just like you how to train dogs. Starting with the basics, tune in each episode and you'll eventually be able to do just about anything as far as training goes. I don't currently live with any dogs, but find the knowledge widely applicable as I grew up with dogs, hear of people in my circle who are struggling to train their dogs, and run into stray dogs on my way home in Taiwan every day. Actually, now that I know the professionals' suggested way to train them to sit and lay down, I kind of want to try it. The stray dogs in my neighborhood, they aren't really too aggressive or anything. So, I don't know. Maybe they even know how to sit down already. But I could try teaching them. So if you're like me anyway, and currently don't have a way to apply these methods, there's no telling when exactly they might come in handy. But there you have it, how to train a dog to sit and lay down. Tune into next week's segment for more dog training tips. The saying goes, the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. But that's not even true. Actually, the sun only rises due east and sets due west on 2 days of the year, the spring and fall equinoxes. On the other days, the sun rises either north or south of due east and sets north or south of due west. And that's not everyone in the world's perspective either. Where the sun rises and sets depends on the season and where you are in the world. But what about the saying that if you got lost, you could look at the moss growing on trees because moss will grow on the north side of trees. That has to be true, doesn't it? For the most part, kind of. Moss normally doesn't grow on the side of the tree facing the sun, but there are many variables. It depends on where you live, which hemisphere you're in, how far away you are from the equator, whether or not you're in a humid climate, whether the tree canopy is thick enough to block out the sunlight, and even which trees are in the forest, because moss will not grow on certain tree species. When we are talking about the northern hemisphere, survivalists often mention that this moss can help point you in the right direction because moss tends to grow more abundantly on the north side of trees there. This is likely due to that side receiving less sunlight, allowing it to retain more moisture where the moss can thrive. Instead of relying on moss, if you have the ability, how about a compass? If that's not an option, here you go. How you can orient yourself virtually anywhere in the world. Place a vertical stick at 90 degrees to the ground and place a small stone where the tip of the shadow is. Wait 10 to 15 minutes, then place another stone where the tip of the shadow moved to. Draw a line between those 2 points, and that is the east-west line. By placing your left foot on the first stone and your right foot on the second stone, you will be facing north. Pretty much. Virtually everywhere you go, the first shadow marked is west and the second is east. If the shadow is shortened, then it is the sun before noon, and if it's elongated, the sun is on its way down. We are wrapping this episode up with some disappointing news, as the Taipei Zoo had to say goodbye to one of its great hornbills. The female great hornbill, known as white eyes, or I think bai mu in Mandarin, passed away just the night before last at the time of airing this episode, after experiencing a loss of appetite and declining body weight for 2 weeks. The veterinarian said white eyes was suffering from anemia, a high white blood cell count, and some liver and gastrointestinal tract issues. She received treatment, which was working at first, but stopped working, and her condition worsened. White eyes came to Taipei Zoo with another great hornbill in 2001 in an exchange program with Thailand's Khao Keo Open Zoo. Her partner's name is Red Eyes and is still alive and well for the time being. They got along very well and were observed feeding each other. White Eyes had laid eggs, but none succeeded through incubations. Because great hornbills live in pairs or groups, the impact of losing a lifelong mate, having that friend pass away, can't be underestimated. So the zookeepers are noting their concerns and already have veterinarians lined up to pay attention to the health of Red Eyes. The great hornbill is listed as a vulnerable species by the International Union for Conservation of Nature's Red List of Threatened Species. They can live up to 50 years in captivity. White Eyes, unfortunately, only made it to a little over 24 years of age. Oh, but wait, an update to the zombie cat story, because I rescued a cat that was zombie-like, very skinny, very infected, very sick, very little fur, and not enough blood. She is better, doing better. That's all I can say for now. She has a little bit of respiratory issues for the time being, but she is getting better, and I can't wait for her to make a full recovery. It's only been a week, so. Have you ever had a memorable experience with an animal? Whether that's an observation at the zoo, an interaction with a wild animal, or probably the thousands of stories you could share as a pet owner, I want to hear about it. If you're a fan of snail mail, please send me letters via the post. And if you're more digital, please send me an email. That way I can read it on air to share with all of our lovely Formosa Fauna friends. It could be the simplest thing, but as long as it means something to you, it means something to me. If you're sending in a letter, the address can be found online. Just look for the number 55 Bei An Road address in Taipei, Taiwan. Write those emails to tristan@rti.org.tw. That is tristan@rti.org.tw. Making it to the end of an episode makes you a Formosa Fauna friend. It's not gross, it's cute. Thank you for tuning in, friend. All animals require enrichment, and Formosa Fauna is one kind of enrichment. After all, We're all just a bunch of wild animals. See you next time for Formosa Fauna Fridays here on Radio Taiwan International.